Knock, knock. Interrupting cow. Moo! Happy Christmas. My name's Zechariah, and this is a Christmas service about interruption. In Luke's Gospel, Christmas starts with my story. I was a priest. I was doing my job at the temple. I was pretty comfortable with my life, if I'm honest. I mean, routine, religion, rotas, all of that stuff. When an angel came and told me that my elderly wife was going to have a baby, I had trouble believing it, if I'm honest. I mean, the last hot flushes were in the distant past. So God muted me for 9 months. Nine months in which I could no longer perform my priestly functions, and I felt redundant and useless. 9 months in which my wife Elizabeth became the spokesperson for the family. I mean, if your life partner is a religious professional, you don't often get a word in my experience. You certainly don't get to exercise much leadership in the worship context. But as I moved aside, I saw Elizabeth flourish and thrive in her own right. And then, of course, my baby was born. You know him as John the Baptist. God unmuted me, and I sang a song over my infant son to tell him who he was. And then, of course, the same angel interrupted Mary's life, and she did a better job than I did of believing what he said. Mary is my wife's cousin, so they were pregnant at the same time, following different but somehow similar miracles, and they could encourage each other. Mary's fiancé Joseph had his dreams interrupted. He thought he and Mary would get married and live a nice, respectable life in Nazareth. But it turns out God had a whole adventure in mind for them, including several years as refugees in Egypt. And when the baby was born, God interrupted some shepherds with songs of glory. Christmas is all about interruptions. Actually, the whole Bible is about God interrupting human plans, constantly disorganizing and reorganizing. It's just that we domesticate it and don't see it that way. The earth floods and then is repopulated. The Tower of Babel topples as languages divide. Abraham must leave his home. Joseph is dislocated into slavery to make Egypt a safe haven for God's people. Moses leads God's people in Exodus from Egypt to the wilderness. Joshua relocates them in the promised land. You get the point. Destruction and exile, and then return and rebuilding. Gathering and scattering and regathering mark the life of the people of God. As Caroline Beckett puts it, other people's disorganizing narratives become our bedtime stories. So, how is God going to interrupt you this Christmas? It might be an interruption like mine, where you are sidelined for a bit, and your work becomes one of laying aside privilege and routine and religious role and rotas, and watching and waiting and empowering others. Here's a poem by the Nigerian writer Enuma Okoro. What if the silence God bestowed was not fully punishment, but also odd blessing? Offering 9 months to sit with the news, to ponder God's words, to process stupefied awe. If you're a busy religious professional like me, this may be rather hard for you. Don't pretend it's easy, but look in those interruption silent times for the odd blessing. But on the other hand, the interruption may not move you in the direction of silence, but of chaos and noise and having to step up, as my wife Elizabeth did, and take on new responsibilities. Maybe, like Joseph, you will let God give you a new adventure, a new set of dreams to replace the ones that God's interrupted. Because Christmas just wasn't just one more disorganizing narrative among many, to be compared with the story of Abraham or Rosa Parks or someone. No, Christmas is the mother of all interruptions. A new era began, a new covenant, a new testament. God broke into the world. It was as if the playwright walked on stage, as if the solution to the equation took human form and shook your hand, as if all the dreams you ever dreamed were summed up in himself, everything you've ever hoped for and more. The comfortable and the mighty and the rich and the oppressors of the poor have created a false, sanitized, consumer, unchallenging Christmas. But that's not the real one. The real Christmas is about God interrupting the world. So please, this Christmas, enjoy yourself. But don't kid yourself. Christmas is all about tradition and nostalgia. It's much more disruptive than that. Knock, knock. Interrupting God. Merry Christmas.